Most Americans learn one simple story about Iran in 1953. The CIA overthrew the democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, and reinstalled the Shah. This story is repeated across American politics, media, and culture. You hear it from politicians, you hear it from television commentators, across the political spectrum, and you see it reinforced through Hollywood, where the CIA is portrayed as decisive and in control. Together, these form the version most Americans accept. But this version leaves out important facts, not because the events were unclear, but because the CIA later misrepresented them, reducing a complex internal crisis into a simpler and more self-serving story. Mossadegh was a member of the National Front. He was not elected by popular vote. Iran was a constitutional monarchy. Like every prime minister before him, Mossadegh was appointed by the Shah after a parliamentary vote, not chosen in a national election. This matters for understanding what followed. It also matters for understanding what legal authority existed and what did not. Before becoming prime minister, Mossadegh publicly threatened the sitting prime minister, General Razmara, with death on the floor of parliament. Shortly afterward, Razmara was assassinated by an Islamist group that operated within a climate of radicalization and political protection. This cleared the path for Mossadegh to take office. That context is rarely mentioned in American retellings. During this period, Mossadegh framed Iran's oil struggle in broader ideological terms. In public statements, he spoke of Iran's oil as part of a wider Islamic cause. This language unsettled domestic opponents and foreign observers alike. By 1953, Iran was deeply unstable under Mossadegh's rule. Oil revenues had collapsed. The economy was failing. Street protests were constant. Political factions were openly fighting each other. Opposition to Mossadegh had grown so intense that he declared martial law in the final days of his government. Iran was not united behind Mossadegh or his vision. This is another part Americans rarely hear. In 1953, most Iranians still supported the monarchy and wanted Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi to remain the head of state. The Shah was widely seen, especially by the middle class and the military, as a symbol of stability in a collapsing system. By that point, Mossadegh no longer commanded broad national consensus. Even some of Mossadegh's closest allies began to doubt that he was the right person to remain in power and turned against him. Several later acknowledged that the crisis had gone too far, the constitutional system was breaking, and that the Shah's return was seen by many as the least chaotic option available. This internal loss of confidence mattered. At this point, the constitutional crisis deepened. After the democratically elected parliament refused to grant Mossadegh expanded emergency powers, he moved to dissolve parliament altogether through a controversial referendum. With the parliament dissolved, Iran entered a constitutional gap. Under Iran's constitution, when parliament was dissolved, the Shah retained the authority to dismiss and appoint an interim prime minister until new elections could be held. It was under this constitutional provision that the Shah issued the order removing Mossadegh in August 1953. This constitutional provision formed the legal basis for the Shah's action at the time. Now the CIA. The main American figure on the ground was Kermit Roosevelt Jr. His role was primarily advisory. He consulted with British intelligence, offered assessments, and discussed possible outcomes. When Mossadegh refused to step down after being legally dismissed on August 16th, Roosevelt considered his mission a failure. After that dismissal, the Shah, acting under his constitutional authority, ordered the Iranian military to restore control and enforce the removal. The chain of authority ran from the Shah to the Iranian military to events on the ground. The CIA did not command Iranian forces. After his dismissal, Mossadegh continued to govern without constitutional authority. What followed was not the overthrow of a sitting legal government, but the removal of a prime minister who refused to accept dismissal. The decisive actions were taken by Iranians and by elements of the military acting in the name of the constitutional order. The United States did not run the operation on the ground. What matters is what happened next. After returning to the United States, Roosevelt described the events as a successful CIA operation. When he later tried to publish his account, the CIA demanded extensive edits, over 100 changes. The agency was not merely protecting secrets, it was shaping how the story would be remembered. During the Cold War, it benefited the CIA to appear powerful and decisive. Media repeated the story, politicians repeated it. Over time, the CIA-centered version became the dominant American memory.
In the middle of the Cold War, the United States played a role in the overthrow of a democratically elected Iranian government.
But that version left out key realities. Iran was already divided. Mossadegh had lost support, even among allies. Many Iranians wanted the Shah back. The CIA initially helped in advisory capacity, and afterward it exaggerated its role, simplifying events and turning a complex internal crisis into a story of American control. What Americans inherited was not a full history, but a constructed one. Years later, even American officials acknowledged this distortion.
A more accurate and fuller picture of what happened in 1953 with Mossadegh. Mossadegh was not removed by the CIA. Mossadegh was removed by the religious establishment, the political leadership, and the military. The CIA was invited in on the first attempt, which failed. And after that, the CIA was no longer involved. And if you go and read the collected works of Ayatollah Khomeini, he talks about in 1953 and makes no reference to the CIA.
Brian Hook, a former senior U.S. official, openly stated that the CIA's narrative of 1953 was exaggerated and misleading.